Hello and welcome to From the Be-All End, and we're talking about Burnley's 1-1 draw at Hull City and looking forward to Saturday's clash with Queen's Park Rangers. I'm Simon Evans and I'm here with Justin Connolly and Paul Woodhouse in this sort of mini-pod today. Wasn't a greatest performance of the season by any stretch at Hull City. Justin, you were particularly unimpressed by that display.
I thought it was awful. It was one of the worst games of football I think I've ever seen. As I said on our little WhatsApp group, it's the kind of game that makes you wonder why you take an interest in football in the first place. I mean, I actually resent having to recall it and come on here and talk about it, but that's what we do, isn't it? So we better get on with it. I mean, what's to say? First half was absolutely diabolical. Second half wasn't much better, but it was slightly better. But
it was.
But that's like saying, you know, Robert Jenrick's slightly better than Kemi Badenoch. Like they're both awful people, aren't they? One's slightly less awful than the other. So, I mean, people who aren't Burnley fans will look at the table and wonder what we're complaining about, won't they? Because we're still second. We're still well in touch. But I don't know. I just want a bit of entertainment. You know, now we've been kind of lacking in that a little bit, haven't we? I sort of think that everything's built on the defence, isn't it? You know, 6 clean sheets in 11 games tells like the story of the season so far. But chances are few and far between, and performances aren't great. And you know, we've dropped points against really, really bad sides, and that sort of makes me worry that our league position might be a bit of a false one. But I don't know. We'll find that out over the coming weeks, won't we?
We will, yeah. Getting a bit political there as well. Just thought it was quite a Stormer-esque performance, to be honest. Really.
All right then, go on.
Woody.
Yes. I think I was quite fortunate that I had a dodgy stream and just kept watching the same 2 minutes over and over for the first half, seemingly. But it wasn't good, was it? And we're starting to see almost a pattern of this. These aren't just kind of one-off performances, it seems to be, that we have this. We try to claim an optimistic false dawn where we think we're going to click the next week and we might just push on from what we thought was maybe a second gear performance where it looks slightly better. And then we seem to revert back to this. What we saw last night, and it all seems really rigid. We look like a poor man's, you know, version of a Southgate side at times, and we just seem to be playing in boxes, and you know, there's no movement up front. There's literally no idea to move forward or play between the lines or whatever the devil we're trying to do. And I don't know. And I think don't get me wrong, we do have this knack of being able to just up it at least half a notch and get something out of a game. We can turn it on a little bit when we need to, like we did in the second half. Like I say, it was a lot better. But it's still slightly worrying how we set our stall out. And it's like I was thinking, it just kept flashing through my mind. Can you imagine this side going up and trying to play like this in the Premier League?
No, don't go there.
No, exactly. No.
We can't just talk about that yet, surely.
No, there's a long way to go before we have to worry about that. But I think for me, it's the movement that's lacking a little bit. That final third, everything feels just a little bit too predictable, doesn't it? It's just you know, it's not like we're giving the ball away all the time and making terrible errors. But like when we've got the ball, there's no feeling of like urgency or direction to it. It's like
No.
It's very controlled. I mean, people use that expression about playing with the handbrake on about Parker Ball, and you start to see what they mean a little bit about that. But there is, I don't know what's missing, Justin. I mean,
I don't know. It's kind of. I tell you what was weird about that game is we all sort of identified that creating chances had become a bit of an issue, and that seemed to change a little bit with the changes he made against Sheffield Wednesday. Particularly Josh Laurent coming in. He seems to be a little bit more progressive, doesn't he, in moving the ball forward rather than sideways and backwards. And then he reverted back to the side that hadn't sort of worked previously for this game. So I think we've all sort of had our say on whether we think Hannibal is the man for that number 10 role. To me, he's not really that creative player. To me, he's more of a ball winner, more of a presser, more of a. But so it's a personnel thing, isn't it? He switched back to that. He switched back to having Brownhill's our biggest goal threat. He's the one who's scoring the goals this season. He's got I think is it 5 goals, and there isn't anybody
before the whole game.
Yeah, there isn't anybody to touch him. But he's dropped him back a little bit deeper, and he's not pushing forward in the same way, and didn't get into the game really. I mean, you know, I think the whole team was off the pace in that first half. I mean, you know, when you're seeing Josh Cullen passing it to their players in our own half, then you start to think something's not quite right here. But I think that's it. I think it's like, why did we change back to that sort of situation that hadn't worked when we'd sort of started a little bit to create a little? I mean, we scored 2 goals against Sheffield Wednesday, which has been sort of unheard of, you know, since those first two games of the season. So that was a little bit baffling. And what good things did happened after he made the changes and brought Josh Laurent back into the side, didn't they? So I don't know. I think it's just that little bit more of a progressive way of thinking. Hannibal tends to hold the ball up and knock it backwards, doesn't he, when he gets it in that number 10 role? And I don't, you know, that's why, you know, Fleming didn't really get into the game, because he didn't get any service, did he? He barely touched the ball in that first half.
5 touches he had, none of which were particularly decisive ones. Yeah,
it's just that progressive way of thinking that we had a little bit more in the Sheffield Wednesday game, but reverted back to that sort of, you know, sterile, aimless nonsense that we had before. But again, you know, look at the table. How can we complain about it?
We can't complain.
Well,
we can complain because, you know,
and we are doing.
Yeah. But it's like we praised him on the last pod for making those tactical personnel switches against Sheffield Wednesday, and then he did undo them for this one, really. In fact, when we talked about it, we said, well, the only one he might be is maybe Laurent isn't up for like 2 games a week, quick succession. Maybe Hannibal comes back into the picture. But I'd presumed that he would keep Brownhill in that position and have Hannibal playing behind him. But the other thing that concerns me is, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this one, Woody, is Luca Koleosho, who at the start of this season was pretty much our star man, we were hoping this season. And now it's getting to the stage where you're thinking, if Sarmiento's fit, do you play Sarmiento and Anthony and leave him out? Because his performance is just getting worse and worse. And is it his fault? Is it the position he's playing in? What's going on with him, do you think, Woody?
I think he reminds me at the minute of like an old school sensible soccer type player that can only run in Tron lines, unless he's going in straights, diagonals, or coming inside, and it always has to be kind of perpendicular. He's looking useless, you know, because he doesn't have the ability to beat a man. He doesn't have tricky feet, and he's, you know, and playing little intricate 1-2s, triangles, or whatever, he never really seemed to come off. And even though there was plenty of space at times for him last night, he still didn't really manage to get beyond it. He was still looking to come back. And I think the first thing you'd say is to switch him over to the left, because it seems to be that running direct off the shoulder, as we saw in the Premier League last year, it was infinitely better. The idea of him having to like be a little bit tricky or anything like that, it just seems to fall to pieces. So, I mean, yes, he's young, isn't he? But I mean, if you aren't going to switch flanks, then I think he's a problem. Between him and Hannibal, there's just nothing going on up front.
Yeah, Justin, I mean, it is disappointing to see the way his season's going, isn't it? Because it started off, I mean, that goal he scored at Leeds where he went the full length of the field and produced that composed finish, and you're thinking, you know, start of the year with him and Odeberg goals, you think, well, we've still got Koleosho, he's going to rip it up in the Championship. Is it also the way teams are playing against us, like lying deep, that doesn't give you that room to move into? What do you reckon's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably is better when you can knock the ball over for him to run onto. I mean, that's or if we play on the break. But quite often we've got the ball, you know, around their penalty area, and he's not that kind of player, is he? I mean, when we think about what he's actually done, you know, we think he was a bright spark in the Premier League for that early part of the season, and he looked, you know, like the only bright spark in that first part of the season. And then he got injured. And then he's come into this season and we've piled all this pressure on him, hoping that he's going to be the player that's going to, you know, rip it up in this division. And I think that's heightened a little bit by the fact we lost all those players in the transfer window. And that day when his name appeared on the team sheet for the first game after that transfer window closed, I gave everybody a massive list because, like, we've kept on to like one of our best players. But I don't know whether the optimism about his sort of, I know, and of course there was a lot of speculation that he might have gone, but I'm not sure whether the optimism about his potential performances this season are really backed up by what's the reality of the situation. Do you know what I mean? I think maybe our expectations of him are a little bit higher than they might have been had circumstances not conspired to us pin all our hopes on him, you know. And Woody's right, you know, his best performances have always been down that left-hand side. You know, that's where he did it in the Premier League for us. So I think there's probably a real case to sort of not be too harsh on him, step back a little bit and try and take a little bit of pressure on him and let him just play. But I do think that he's playing. I don't know why he's playing on the left-hand side to accommodate Anthony playing on the left-hand on the right-hand side to accommodate Anthony playing on the left-hand side, because to me, he's got the more potential to create stuff if he's playing in his best position, and his best position clearly from what we've seen so far is on that left-hand side.
Yeah, it's just not working, not clicking for him at all at the moment. And I think you've got a point there that maybe there's been a little bit too much too soon for Koleosho in terms of his status within it all and the expectations around him. Because really, if you think about it, last season with the players he signed, you know, he wasn't supposed to be the star man, was he? Really? I mean, it was a bit of a surprise when he even started it so early in the season, because you were expecting someone like Trezor to be playing in that role, and we also, of course, had Benson and Zarori, who we thought would be higher up the pecking order than this kid who's come in with a couple of games for Espanyol. I mean, very little experience before he came to Burnley, thrust into the Premier League, played more games, then gets a big injury, he's out for half a season, and then before he knows it, he's our star man who we're hanging our hat on. So, it has been quite a lot. And I think you're right. I mean, Parker will know how he'd react to being left out, but, at the moment, if things aren't working for him, it has to start to be something to think about, doesn't it? Would it? I mean,
well, yes, because sides seem to have worked him out. Either there are some very good left backs in this division, or just doubling up on him is enough to kind of effectively take him out of the game, because he doesn't necessarily have that close control. He's not a Benson type, is he? He can't play with his back and back to goal and take on a man with a little bit of trickery. It's got to be straight line running. So it's you've either got to play to that strength particularly and turn him into basically Johnny Francis Mark II and just say, stay on halfway line, son, and run after that, as you get out ball. or you've got to try something slightly different, and because it's just not working, and it's not going to work, is it? So
we saw a few.
Parker.
We saw a few different faces coming on at the end. Enoch Adye coming on the right hand side, and we also saw Huntunji for a brief spell again. I was a bit surprised to see Enoch Adye, but Sarmiento wasn't in the squad, was he? Presumably some sort of knock there. Did either of those two catch? I mean, we seemed to be more urgent, almost a little bit panicky in that last stage, but we almost did get a winner, didn't we? I mean, an absolute sitter from Anthony that he'll never want to see again, really. But did those two, were they part of that, do you think? Did they help bring that urgency, or was it just the situation?
I think so. I mean, it injected a little bit of a lift to the side, didn't it, when those two came on? I mean, I have to say, I don't know much about a guy. Why he didn't have that name on the back of his shirt, did he? That was a
Boateng he had on his shirt.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a bit of a mystery, as Chris spotted. He also uses that name on his Instagram, but on none of the profiles or the Wikipedia or anything does Boateng feature. So I don't know. That's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
But no doubt.
But, you know, he looked lively, didn't he? He looked like he could contribute, you know, but it's very difficult to judge in 10, 15 minutes, however long he was on the pitch, about whether he can make a long-term contribution or not. But, you know, Hutonji's another one, isn't he? We've not really seen enough of him to know whether he's really got, you know, that kind of presence that we need up front. I think we learned that Fleming's not a number 9, didn't we? I think. I mean, apart from the fact that, you know, as soon as he dropped back into that number 10 position, he scored, which is where he scored all his goals previously from that position. And let's be honest, you know, Foster's our main hope for number 9, and he's only scored 1 goal this season. So, you know, we can do with giving. We've got the leeway to give Hutonji a bit of a go, haven't we? Without worrying too much about whether he's going to net, because we're getting goals from elsewhere to win these games. So, they both made a difference, I think, which is all you can ask for from a substitute late on in a game like that. And, you know, although they weren't involved in the goal, you know, it was after the changes that were made that we got back into the game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I have to say, in the last pod, I did spend quite a bit of time talking about how I thought Zion Fleming was a number 9 and could definitely play number 9. And I'm not writing him off after one performance like that, where he didn't get any service at all, really. But...
No, he didn't. But he didn't look like it. He had, you know, we talked a lot about his presence, didn't we? And I know you. Everyone else was really enthusiastic about it, but I'd forgotten he was playing in that game. Man, he wasn't the only one, was he? Let's be honest.
But it does speak to maybe some of what we'd seen with Foster in the way that we'd set up again. It's no coincidence that we're seeing like Hannibal and Koleosho and that type of performance, and the guy who's playing up front hasn't contributed. You know, so I think it maybe speaks to some of that as well, because we know Fleming has produced.
Yeah, that's a fair point. No matter, you know, if we'd have played J-Rod there, we would have had the same story because of the way we're playing in that final third. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny season though, isn't it? Just moving away from that specific performance, like I don't know how to feel about this season at all. Really, like we're winning games by not playing that well. But you look at it and you go, well, what can we moan about? We won and we're second in the league or whatever. And then you watch the next game and it's a bit worse. And then probably we'll beat QPR on Saturday without it being a great performance. And they're one of the worst teams in the league. And so that doesn't mean anything. I mean, I don't know. I'm finding it a little bit difficult to sort of either get worked up, angry about how crap it is, or sort of enthusiastic about how well we're doing in the league table. I don't know how to feel about all this.
I'm kind of with you, to be fair.
Believe me, I was angry last night, but I think it's the age-old kind of football fans' dilemma, isn't it? what do you want? Do you want entertainment or do you want results? I mean, ideally, you want both, don't you? But if you have to choose, results is what you really want, isn't it? Results,
Yeah.
and that's what gets you up the table. That's what wins things at the end of the day. And we had this for a long time under Sean Dyche, didn't we? I mean, Chris is not here, so I have to bring him into it. We had this under Sean Dyche. The football wasn't that entertaining, but we managed to grind out results that kept us in the Premier League for all those years. And I don't think anybody really complained about it. It was when we started not getting the results that the sort of not entertaining football starts to become a little bit wearing. So I think it's okay to get results without being entertaining. It's when those kind of results start disappearing that you've got a problem. So I'm with you. I find it very difficult to get and be enthusiastic about it when the football is the way it is. But I've said this often before on this podcast. I think defending, goalkeeping, all that sort of stuff, controlling games, these aren't particularly the eye-catching things that teams do that really sort of entertain the fans. But it's just as much a part of the game and is just as impressive as being sort of, progressive and attacking. So, I think we should just celebrate the fact that we've had 6 clean sheets in 11 games. We're doing a lot of things right that you need to do right to be a successful football team. Sean Dyche used to talk about the framework, didn't he? It just needs a little bit of a tilt in one direction or the other. And I think every football fan would tell you that a successful football team is built on a successful defence. Everything else comes on top of that. If we don't let them score, which we haven't done very often this season, then we're not going to lose many football matches. If we can just tilt things back in a little bit in the right direction at the other end of the pitch, then there's a chance we can run away with the division built on what we've enjoyed so far this season.
Yeah, I mean the defensive side of it's been pretty much fine,
Superb.
hasn't it? And that's no mean thing. That's not inconsiderable. I mean, I also do wonder, like, what is when you sort of think about previous campaigns, and there's a little bit of you sort of thinks like, Vokes and Ings. It'll be great to see Vokes and Ings in the Premier League. Let's see how Man United defend against them. Or it'd be great to see, Zarori and Benson. We were thinking like it was going to be really interesting to see them in the Premier League. I haven't got any sense at all at the moment of like. I mean, we're just so far away from that, aren't we? I mean, it's just is that just modern football that means that like we're talking about a season where our goal is to get somewhere where we know we're not going to be competitive at the moment. And
I mean, I don't think it's wrong having that level of expectation because we've just been there and we've spent quite a lot of time there, and we do have a bit of an understanding as to what we think it takes, and we know this isn't it.
Yeah,
and it's like, as we were saying, it's great being solid, but it feels like a plan B. When we say, well, you've got to be able to grind results out, but surely that's not our plan A. But every week we're trying to grind results out. We know we've got a little bit more.
That's what kept us in the Premier League for all them years, though, isn't it?
Oh, but I think that's slightly different. I think that's an approach in the Premier League versus what we are in the Championship. Two different approaches. I find that just grinding out these results is when you know that there's we have at least another 2 gears to go through, or should have another couple of gears to go through, is just slightly disappointing. I think the Premier League is a completely different beast, and if you go up trying to play this way, that it's arguably a worse squad than we had in the last Premier League campaign, and this is going to get overrun. We're not going to grind anything out in a Premier League playing particularly like this with this set of players. So I'm kind of with Simon. I don't know what to think of this lot at the minute. But
well, if we did get promoted this season, there's absolutely no chance we'll go into the Premier League with the same squad. We've not done that for years, have we?
We don't do that. Continuity.
yeah, I know.
Building on success. We don't do that.
Yeah.
No, but you can't quite imagine that sort of, Josh Laurent run that he put together at the weekend happening against Man City. Can you really? It's a totally different ball game. I mean, one thing that did come up this week, just as a slight aside, the government putting forward their strengthened football governance bill for the regulator, but apparently now including in it the question of parachute payments. And quite a few reports suggesting that there's going to be a lot of pressure to get rid of parachute payments. Now, it's hard to think of a club in England that would be more impacted by getting rid of parachute payments than Burnley, because we are now the main yo-yo club in English football, aren't we? Really, and we bounce back and we get that reassurance there. I mean, if we do go up and we come back down, there's no parachute payments, then, Pace has really got his work cut out then, hasn't he? I mean, what do we make of that one? Are we comfortable about that?
I mean, it totally fucks us, doesn't it? Like, basically, that's it. That's designed to make sure that the bigger clubs, and I mean, even that the Sunderlands or whatever, who are going to get that back in, naturally gravitate towards the Premier League. And without parachute payments, then I really don't know what we're going to be able to do. That idea of having these smaller clubs maybe popping into the Premier League and then popping out again, it's just not going to happen, is it?
It's like, for me, the parachute payment gives the clubs that little bit of incentive. Like if going back to what we were just talking about, we're rebuilding. If we go up and we're rebuilding for next season, we do so in the knowledge that if we go and spend 100 million trying to be competitive, it's not going to be the end of the world if we go down, because we're not suddenly hitting a black hole. But if we are suddenly hitting a black hole, well, those clubs aren't going to spend that money then, are they? Clubs like Burnley, they're going to be a bit more careful. And then they're not going to be able to, they're even less likely to be able to compete with the big teams, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is that not?
That's exactly what's going to happen. Where's the incentive? You're going to be absolutely scared shitless if you're one of these small clubs thinking, oh, bloody hell, we've got to kind of go up and compete, which is, some of the thinking that used to go on, didn't it? And like you say, without that parachute payment as that safety net, then you're not going to speculate to accumulate. You can't even speculate to accumulate now. Spending between 100 and 200 million isn't going to guarantee you a bottom, just finishing outside the bottom three. So you're definitely not going to do it. Think of all the bloody fire sales. It's going to be like this past summer every single year
with every club.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Woody's probably right when he suggests that the bigger clubs in the Championship are gain an advantage by that. But I'm not even sure that is that big an advantage, because even if you're a Sunderland or one of those clubs that's got like quite a sizable fan base and the potential to exploit that commercially, the amount of money that you've got to spend to try and stay in the Premier League is even beyond clubs like that, isn't it? Really. So without those,
I mean, they'll wind up getting the backing. There's only a handful.
Well, they're the ones who'll get promoted. Yeah. They're the ones who'll get promoted and then come straight back down again because they don't invest in the summer like you need to do. But I mean, a short term, it seems like a disaster, doesn't it? But long term, will it not? What will it do long term? Will it make clubs at the bottom of the Premier League less likely to spend money as well? Because if they go down and stay down there struggling, I mean, the Premier League's not competitive anyway, is it?
I mean, does it encourage academies? Do you get more homegrown talent? I don't know. Probably.
I don't know. I think the short term effect will make life very difficult for those clubs like us and like the better teams in the Championship. But I think maybe long term, it will give us the potential to be a bit more competitive when we do get into the Premier League. Because don't forget, those parachute payment that confidence that the parachute payments give you also give the confidence to teams like Everton and teams like that who are perpetually at risk of being relegated.
The Bournemouth,
those kind of players. So maybe over a period of years, as that kind of system beds in, it will make it. I mean, it won't make the Premier League more competitive, but it might make it the smaller clubs, the clubs in the bottom half of the Premier League and the top half of the Championship, have the potential to be a little bit more competitive, maybe.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm wondering if what you're saying, Woody, is that like it levels the playing field in the Championship, which is why the EFL want to get rid of it, really. Rick Parry and these people have argued against it, and League One clubs have argued against it for ages and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So that the relegated teams aren't in the position that we're in now and we're in this summer. But maybe over time what happens is the Championship reverts to being what it used to be before, and what is the natural knock-on of the Premier League, which is that the big clubs in the Championship. Is this what you're saying, Woody? Really, that like the big clubs, the Sunderlands, eventually you could be who else are the Sheffield Uniteds, the Sheffield Wednesdays, even those clubs from big cities, Derby County, Nottingham Forest, if they come back down, those kind of teams, they'll do well in the Championship. Whereas the Prestons, the Burnleys, the Blackburns struggle to compete because they haven't got the resources that they get from this artificial mechanism called the parachute payment.
Exactly, and it also will probably guarantee that those bigger clubs that haven't had the financial investments and been bought out by foreign investment, will find themselves being bought out properly to go and compete in the Premier League, because there isn't really another vehicle in order to do it, is there? So, I mean, it's like everything else. It does level itself out, but you've got to wind up having, some form of financial fair play or a salary cap within the Premier League. Otherwise, it's just going to be arguably as bad, if not worse, than what it is currently. It's going to be more of a two-tier in the Premier League. So we shall see.
There's a lot of issues there, aren't there, really?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not convinced that this kind of macro regulation of football is going to work, to be honest, because nothing ever seems to work when they try to regulate football. I mean, look at the attempts to do it through sustainability or financial fair play and so on. You end up with 115 charges against the club, and even people who have like a morbid fascination in that Man City case can't tell you what those 115 cases are about. It's ludicrous. Big issues that I'm sure we'll return to in the future. Until then, though, we've got QPR in the more immediate agenda before we leave. Chaps, QPR next to bottom of the league. QPR mate of mine says it's one of the worst QPR teams he's ever seen. We really should be. This should be the game where we provide some entertainment and some goals, shouldn't it? But...
Yeah, well, it should be, shouldn't it? I mean, they've had a terrible start to the season. But I was there the last time they played at Turf Moor and they beat us. So you can't take anything for granted in this division, I don't think. I mean, they've got Steve Cook there, haven't they, in the middle of the defence? He played, all those years at Bournemouth, came up through the divisions with Bournemouth, and helped Forest get up, didn't they? So he's got all those Premier League games under his belt, lots of experience. We mentioned Jimmy Dunn, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about our academy. So he was on Burnley's books, played a few. I think he scored a Premier League goal for us, didn't he? So he'll be quite keen as a product of our academy to give a good showing. But it's another one of those, isn't it? We've got to have too much for them. Especially at home, we've got to have too much for them. I'm predicting a scrappy 1-0 victory for the Clarets. That's gone down well.
That's because we agree with you. It'd be just an unconvincing, 2-0 or something. It will.
No, we're going to whoop them 4-0. It all comes together.
Oh, bloody hell.
Collier rips them apart.
There we go.
Fleming revels in the number 9 role. We'll have to take back our words again in the next episode, which seems to be what we do every week now.
unless Trezor comes back.
There
you go.
Honestly, I don't think
There's some hope in. Yeah.
they've not proved. I don't think they've really proved us wrong. Over these first 11 games of the season, we have the success is built on the defense, obviously, and we've just got a little bit more quality, haven't we, than anybody else because of our circumstances and situation, and that has been just enough to get us over the line.
And we did show that last night with that first goal. That was quite a nice bit of quality.
The first goal, was there another one after I switched off?
Should have been another one, shouldn't there?
Yeah,
should have been
absolutely. Yeah. That's the first time they've had me out of my seat. Actually, that moment when it was sort of bouncing around, and I was actually up. I was actually enthusiastic and sort of excited by it for a brief.
Before the heads went into the hands.
That was soon snuffed out.
At least we know Anthony's not going to be a makeshift number 9, don't we?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, thanks very much for joining us. Again, we will be back on Monday with a debrief of whatever transpires against Queen's Park Rangers. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Follow us on Twitter at B-Hole Podcast. Buy your hoodies and your T-shirts at our shop. Subscribe and tell your friends all about it. And until then, up the Clarets.